all this being said, this new economic policy by the Fed, how does this impact you? Because it's going to impact your savings, it's going to impact your salary, and it's going to impact your investments. If I start with your savings and your salary, let's go back to what we talked about here. When we have money printing happen, when you have the Federal Reserve Bank creating more dollars, that means more dollars are entering our economic system. But our dollars aren't backed by anything tangible. Our money, what we call money, isn't backed by physical gold. It's backed by a promise by the United States government that these dollars have value. That means that we can essentially print an unlimited amount of money. It wasn't always like that, but that's what happened after 1971, because in 1971, then President Richard Nixon temporarily took the United States dollar off of the gold standard, because before 1971, our money was backed by gold. If we wanted to print more money, the Fed needed more gold to justify more money printing. But then the problem was we had a lot of debts here in the United States. The government had to pay a lot of bills and didn't have the money to do so, and the Fed couldn't print the money to fund these bills. The government was on the verge of going bankrupt. So instead of declaring bankruptcy, the government instead said, we're no longer going to be backed by gold, which then meant that the Fed could print an unlimited amount of money, lend it to the government, and then the government paid off all their bills. All the problems were solved, right? Except now when he printed this money, we had the inflation problem of the 70s. That was the highest inflation that we've seen since the pandemic. So money printing helped the government pay their bills, but then it created the inflation problem. And we saw it again happen in 2020. And this is where now, if the Federal Reserve Bank is going to continue creating more money, that means that the value of each individual dollar goes down, because we can create more dollars, but that doesn't increase the amount of wealth out there, because we're just creating more currency. So more dollars get created, the value of dollars go down, causing the prices of things to go up. So if you have $1,000 in the bank or $1 million in the bank, and that dollar is not increasing to keep up with inflation, the dollar is effectively losing value. So if you have $1 million in the bank, it's growing by 1% a year, but inflation is 3%. Well, that means over the course of 12 months, you've effectively lost $20,000 worth of buying power because your savings did not grow fast enough to keep up with inflation. And we don't know what inflation is going to look like in 2026, but right now it's hovering at around 3%. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Next has to do with your salary.